Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you do not know me, my name is Millie. If you do know me, apologies. I'm like a blessing into your life. I just went on a family holiday, got back today actually, and my dad was like, you do just come out with a load of utter crap. And I was like, Simon, I make everybody's lives more wonderful. I said to my mum, I'm so full of just energy and charisma and passion that it overflows out of my being. And that's what makes me so special. Today I thought we would do something a little bit different to my usual content. I feel like I do a lot of uni vlogs, uni content, and then also my camp stuff, because obviously I go away to summer camp most summers, every summer for the last 3 years. So you obviously see a lot of that. But another part of me, another aspect, another layer to my personality is the fact that I really like to read, and I have always been a big reader, a very avid reader, ever since I was a little baby kid. It's been a talent of mine, can't lie, and I really like dropped off in the last couple of years of high school and sixth form and the first couple of years of uni. Just didn't really have the time, and then last year I read 51 books. So pretty good, and I've recently got back into reading. I've been going to Waterstones again, I know, in this economy, and to the charity shops. I love going to the charity shop and looking in the book section, and I thought I would sit down and walk you through what I've read in the first quarter of 2024. I've read 21 books in the first 3 months of 2024, which is insane. My goal for this year is 30, but the fact that I'm already over halfway there, and I'm currently reading books 22 and 23 like simultaneously, it's looking very likely. I like watching these videos because they're longer form videos. I can put them on in the background whilst I'm doing something else like cleaning, and I think it also exposes you to more books, which is good. The reason I'm filming it in my parents' house as well, you're probably thinking, whoa, that's kind of different to what we're used to. It's kind of small, there's not really very good lighting in here, so this is the space we're filming in. Like, the bed is right here, the other wall is here. Yeah, this is what we're working with, but it's fine. Here are all my books. The reason we're filming here, I don't know why I've just gone on a whole ramble and didn't even explain. The reason I'm filming here is because all my books are at home, mostly at home. It has gotten to the point where they are overflowing the bookshelves. I really don't know what to do about it. I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to pick these up. I'm scared. I'm scared. This could be a disaster. I've stacked them chronologically in terms of when I read them, so we can go down them together. And then any series which I maybe didn't read chronologically, I've just put all together from when I read the first book, because it's just easier, because I've read quite a few series actually. Not finished them all. I've not finished most of them actually, but yeah, read quite a few, which I thought I'd cover. Ooh, that nearly tipped back. Okay, the book I started with this year, I was on a very non-fiction kind of vibe at the beginning of this year. I'm really trying to push my boundaries on the types of books I read. You will find, I feel like I've got quite a varied selection at the moment. I am trying to work my way through the books that have been on my bookshelf and on my to-be-read list for absolutely years, but usually I prefer to stick with fantasy and romance, my two favourite genres. I'm just a sucker for them, so I really tried to push out and read like a fiction and then a non-fiction book towards the end of last year. And the non-fiction book I began reading was This Much Is True by Miriam Margolyes. This is her... Okay, this is really bad, but I don't know the difference between like autobiography and biography. She wrote it herself. I think that makes it an autobiography, right? Me editing is going to be looking up the definition, like... but it's fine. I got recommended this when I was in the charity shop, because I got this from an Oxfam Books, like a secondhand shop, and the guy was like, yes, it's incredible, she's just come out with a second one. The only way I know Miriam Margolyes, obviously she's an actress, is from Harry Potter. I've seen her like a couple of times on the Graham Norton show, but apart from that I've never really encountered any of her other works or really read about her life or anything, and I think this is just a brilliant book. I laughed out loud. There were so many good stories, so many incredible things that just made me think, how has one person lived so many incredible lives and like done so many cool things? I think it's very she's quite blunt and she is very out there. I don't think she's a person for everyone. I know when I was reading it, I spoke to some people about it and they said, oh, like, I don't really like her. I love her. I think she's funny. I think she doesn't beat around the bush, which a lot of people do in this day and age. Like, they pretend or they're fake to people's faces. None of that from her. She'll be very, you know, blunt about it. She focuses heavily a lot on, in this book, her childhood and kind of how she grew up and the community she grew up in, which I think is really interesting. I came away from the book with kind of a sense of renewed sense on the way I look at life and how I should be sort of going through life and interacting with the people around me, and it made me really kind of reevaluate my relationships with people, and am I doing enough, and am I spending enough time with the people I love, and am I sort of putting all my energy into the work I love and things like that, because she's such a passionate narrator and also just a passionate person, and I really kind of connected with her. She is very out there with some of the stuff she says, but it is funny. So if you probably think you're gonna like Miriam Margolyes, if you like her other work, if you've seen her on telly and things like that, and you like her, then I would recommend this book. If you positively despise her, probably wouldn't read the book, because she comes across the same way in the book as she does on telly and, you know, when in interviews and things like that. But yeah, I would recommend this. Clearly I was on a non-fiction roll at the beginning of the year because I went on to another non-fiction, also got this at a charity book shop, and I was so happy when I found it because I'd just been saying to my friend I really wanted to read it. It was all over TikTok at that point. It's Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. She actually came to the Lowry, which is the theatre that's local to me at uni in Salford, and I could have gone and seen her kind of speak about this book and got a signed copy, and I didn't go because I hadn't read the book yet, and I really wish I had because I do know a friend that went and she said she loved it. This is very, I don't know if it's because of where I'm at with my life, and obviously I'm a young adult, I'm 21. She talks a lot about her time at uni and her time as being a young adult and her friendships and relationships at that point in her life, so it feels all very relevant to me. And I think if you are a woman in her late teens, early 20s, you will find this the same kind of, you will feel a connection to it, you will find it very relatable. This also made me completely reassess my friendships and the way I see relationships and things like that. I've always kind of struggled with feeling sort of behind and kind of unusual because the majority of my friends are all in long-term relationships and I'm not, and I've always kind of felt like, oh, there must be something kind of wrong with me. And I was like, actually, I read this book and I was like, why did you think that? And it kind of made me realise how much I value my friendships and how much my friendships fulfill me in my life and how much I kind of get out of the friendships, if that makes sense. That seems so like I'm using them, but you know, like, friendships fulfill you. You know, you spend time with your friends, you feel comforted, you feel happy, you get enjoyment from doing things with your friends, and that's what this book made me realise, and it made me feel like I'm not quite so behind and that really everything is fine and alright and dandy. Third book is The Love That Split the World by Emily Henry. This was a book I picked up a good couple of years ago. I can kind of tell because I will read the books I picked up when I was a little bit younger, maybe at like 14, 15, 16, which I still haven't read at 21. I know it's kind of bad. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is clearly not aimed at my age range, and this is one of those books. There was nothing particularly wrong with it. It's about a girl who is sort of splitting between, she has dreams about this old woman who comes to her in these dreams and she tells her stories, and then in her sort of everyday life she is splitting between worlds and she falls in love with a boy in the other world, but it's not as science fiction-y as that. It's a bit difficult to explain. It's kind of a bit spiritual in a way more than science fiction-y. The way it says like two worlds makes it seem science fiction-y, but it's not at all. It's set in a normal high school world, but there's like that added extra of this sort of mystery of what's happening. You know, can she solve it? Can she yeah. Is it a happy ending? You know, can they have their happy ending type vibe? It just wasn't incredible writing. I think at the age I'm at, I'm looking for sort of more quality. It was very easy to read, I got through it quite quickly. Just didn't really particularly connect with the characters or feel any love for them. I'm finding that more and more though, that with books that are based in high school, obviously the oldest they can be really is 18, and I don't really relate to that anymore because I'm not that age. The plot was, you know, subpar. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't groundbreaking either. So if you want an easy romance read, yeah, but I would say this is more for like younger teenagers. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had been younger when I'd read it. It kind of gives me the vibes of a Wattpad book that's been published. And I think that kind of explains everything you need to know. Okay, the next books are the first series I got reading this year, and it is the Bridgeton series. Yeah, I know, pretty good. So I thrifted all of these books. I have 6 out of the 8 from the series, and I've read all 6 now. Just finished them all quite recently. Very happy that I've managed to get pretty much the full set. They're all the matching covers apart from the Duke and I as well, so love that. I'm going to go through each of them individually and kind of give my opinions quite quickly. As a series, I think I enjoy the world that they're set in. It doesn't feel too... I don't know if it's because I watched the TV series first, and I think that's kind of what's stuck in my mind a little bit more. I personally, this is going to be really controversial, this is the first book series that I've thought the books weren't as good as the on-screen equivalent. I'm just going to put it out there, and usually I'm a heavy, like, the book is better, the book has got more details. I think the actors actually really bring to life the characters in a way that makes them more likeable. Like, I didn't really like Kate in these books. I think she's a bit of a wet character. I think she's a bit weak. In the series, I think, is it Simone Ashley, I think, is the actress's name, did an incredible job. Also, the guy that plays Anthony, I think he makes him so much more likeable in the TV series. I think, oh my goodness, yeah, so much better. And I'm really excited for season 3, but let me go through each of the books. The Duke and I genuinely could not give you my opinion on it because it was so unmemorable that I don't even remember what I thought about the book. It's kind of bad. I don't think I minded it. I got through it in one day, I believe, so it was kind of, you know, they're not my favourite duo in the TV series, but I don't hate them either. And I quite like that Daphne appears throughout the book series. Was really disappointed in the second one because the second series is my favourite out of all of the series I've watched so far, and I just didn't really like the characters and the way they were written. I didn't really like Anthony and Kate. It just wasn't for me. I think they portrayed the relationship better in the TV series. And that's all I've got to say on that one. Third one was, I believe, Penelope. Oh no, Benedict. Oh my gosh, it's because obviously Penelope's series is coming out, but Colin and Penelope series is third, isn't it? They've changed the order around. Oh my goodness, Benedict and Sophie, such an underrated couple. Bro, such an underrated couple. Cannot believe that the series has skipped them. Fuming about that. This is one of my favourite Bridgeton books I've read so far. Probably my second favourite. I love Benedict and I love Sophie. Then Penelope and Colin's book, and I'm gonna be so real, I hate this couple. I hate Penelope. I think she's such an annoying character. I'm sorry, but I just don't understand how she can get away with the whole Lady Whistledown thing. I get it's all about like women's independence and she's trying to create her own way in the world. I also just think, I feel like Penelope settled for Colin. Like, I do understand why they get together, but I don't like Colin. I really don't like him. I think his behaviour is quite immature. I also think he suddenly had this like light bulb moment which doesn't really fit for me, and I just think, girl, you could do so much better. Like, why? I feel like she's settling, and I don't like that. And I also don't like her character as it is. I don't like her in the TV series either, even though, is it Nicola? I think the actress called does an incredible job of playing her. The most disappointing book, though, has to go to Eloise's book. Sorry, I don't know what Julia Quinn was thinking when she wrote this book, but she was not in her right mind. You're telling me that she settles for Sir Philip? Wrong. Wrong. Somebody else, if you've read this, comment about it, and please share your opinions on Sir Philip. If you've not read this, go and read it. come back to me, we can have a chat about it, because I'm sorry, he is probably the least likeable love interest. Why is he just rude throughout the book? Like, go and read the book and tell me he's not just, like, nasty. I would not be staying in this house raising his kids. Sorry, Eloise. And I also think it does a disservice to Eloise's character, who's shown herself to be independent throughout this whole series. She's very snarky. I like the fact that she got married, because I do think it is something she realised she ended up wanting. However, I think she was morphed in this book into a character she's not actually, in order to fit the marriage trope. Controversial opinion maybe, but that's what I think, and I honestly hated it. I can barely finish the book. However, then we go to the 6th book in the Bridgeton series, and we get my darling Francesca. Stop, bro. This book is the best book of the Bridgeton series so far. But out of the books I've read, this is by far my favourite. Francesca, I'm sorry, deserves better from her family. This is really well written, I actually think, in terms of covering more in-depth themes throughout the narrative. I feel like the other Bridgerton books are very like easy romance reads, and they don't really go too in-depth into anything else, whereas with Francesca's story we start to explore themes of grief and friendship and loneliness, and I don't think Julia Quinn has ever written sort of anything like that within the Bridgerton series before this book. I really enjoyed the fact that it was completely separate from her family. I mean, we saw her family a couple times, but really not that much. Also, in this book, I think it shows how the Bridgerton family aren't completely perfect, which I think is how they're portrayed in the other books. Like, they're this perfect huge family, and like they have all these daughters and sons who manage to get all these great marriages and like really high up marriages, and they're all good looking, they're all funny, they're all charming, like everyone loves them. I think this does a good job of showing the cracks actually in those relationships, and maybe how not all the siblings feel like that way and feel like this huge family connection, which I personally love. And Francesca is just the most perfect character. I really hadn't seen much about her book until I read it, and then I was like, no, like this, if you read any Bridgerton book, I would read this one. Okay, we have quite a few book series coming all at once, but the next one is a trilogy. I think these may be the best books I've read this year, and also the best books I've read in quite a long time, which is a pretty bold statement. It's This Mortal Coil by Emily Savada, and bro, sorry. I thought this was a standalone book until I got to the end of it, and I was like, there's two more. So I've got This Cruel Design is the second one, and then also This Vicious Cure is the third one. So this series is sci-fi mixed with post-apocalyptic world, mixed with a little bit of romance, mixed with strong female main character, saves the world kind of vibe, but she also has a lot of things to overcome in getting there. Essentially, this world is just built up to be the most incredible story world. So they're all born, it's set in the future, where humans are all born, and they instantly, when they're born, get like this, they call it a panel in the book, injected into their arms, and it's essentially technology that like grows in your forearm, and then everybody has like healing nanites, so people heal faster, and all this like technology where you can see better, and you're just like an enhanced human essentially, and then you can also get things that like change your hair colour. It's just used all over the world, and then one day this disease comes round and makes people really sick, and they explode when they die from this virus. If you come across somebody that's sick, you get this thing called the wrath, and you just go wild, and you like eat the person, you take bites out of the person who's got this sickness, because the only way to be immune to this sickness is to have eaten the skin of an infected person. So that's wild, and it's very much built upon in this first book. Like, we're living in this post-apocalyptic world with Kat. Half the people are living on the surface and half the people are living in these government-run underground bunkers, and her dad is one of the world's best coders, and he has been taken away by the government, by this like government company, to try and find a cure, essentially. And then she finds out some things which are world-rocking, changing. We get introduced to the love interest, who I love, Cole. Oh my gosh, incredible character. And that's kind of this story, and we grow with her. She's called Katarina, the main character, and we kind of grow with her. And then we go into the second book, which is just as incredible. It does get a lot more sciencey in this book, and there's a lot of like big words, and I was a bit uncertain because I was like, I'm not the biggest sciencey person ever. Like, I'm a reader and a drama person. I don't understand what you're trying to say to me, and I was really worried I wasn't going to understand it and get a bit confused. You don't at all. You get very used to the jargon they use in the books, and I don't think it's confusing at all, and they explain it quite well in ways that isn't like, oh, I'm just actually getting a load of words dumped at me to explain it as a reader. The second book does feel less like we're focused on the disease and more like we're focused on the politics between this government company and kind of unveiling everything they've done in the past, and kind of exploring different characters and the history of different characters and how that's impacted them and the relationships between different characters. I really enjoyed it. I was uncertain because I think sometimes a trilogy starts off with a really strong first book, and I was scared that because this book was so incredible, the second one wasn't going to be as good. It was definitely different, but it was still in the same story world. The characters still did the same things that I would have expected them to after learning about them and meeting them in the first book. And also the plot twist at the end of this book, I was like, bro, sorry? What? And then we get to the last book, and I think this did a really, really good job of wrapping up the series. I was really impressed, actually. I think it's one of the best trilogies I've read in a while, because I think every single book is strong in its own right, and I think that's difficult to find these days, because I always think there's a weak book, or like they have a weak ending. This, again, very different, focuses on different things. I don't want to give too many spoilers away because I feel like it's quite easy to with this series when I'm talking about it. If you like sci-fi, it's like a light sci-fi. I wouldn't say it's very heavy. I'm not a big fan of heavy sci-fi. It's kind of like dystopian, technology, futuristic, but in a really ace way. Okay, third series is the Half Bad series. So I actually read Half Bad last year and then read the second two in the next one. It's a trilogy, I don't know what I'm saying. I read the first one last year and I read the last two in the trilogy this year, Half Wild and Half Lost. They're both by Sally Green. Both, obviously it's a trilogy, of course they're both by Sally Green. Bro, I'm losing my mind talking about these books. I personally really did not enjoy this series. I don't even know why I finished it, because I read the first one and I hated it. Honestly, I think the only reason I finished this series is because we own the books and my brother read them and he enjoyed them. I really liked the message behind the books, because essentially it's a story world where magic exists and there are like people with magic, and you're either a white witch or a black witch, but our protagonist Nathan is a half-breed. His mum was a white witch and his dad is a black witch, so he's like half white, half black, and it goes into the politics and sort of the abuse he suffers from the system because he is this half-breed, and white witches are painted as the good witches and black witches are the bad witches. And the whole trilogy is talking about this sort of racism, they call it. Against black witches, and how the black witches have been hunted and killed for all these years, and then the white witches are basically wanting to completely take over and rule the world, and these black witches like are having to get killed. They've all got different powers. They all have to, on their 17th birthday I think it is, get given 3 gifts and then drink the blood of a relative, which sounds a bit culty now I say it out loud, but it all works within the story world. And I really like, you know, the way she's built it up, and the whole white witches, black witches, the rituals they have to go through, and like their gifts, which are their powers. I really like that aspect of it, but I found all the characters very unlikable. I really didn't like Nathan, and he is only a child for like the first book, which is why I think I found it difficult to connect to him. But I just think he keeps doing silly things throughout the books, which I really don't agree with. And I have to sort of rein myself in and think, well, think about all the abuse he suffers, and that you kind of go along his story in the first book and experience that abuse like real time with him, which can make you sympathetic. But I just found him to be really annoying, I'm not gonna lie. I really didn't like the first love interest we had. I found her really annoying, and the way Nathan kind of made decisions based around her was so ridiculous. Like some of the things he was just, because it's from his perspective kind of, and like we're seeing like the way he thinks about things, I was just banging my head against the table. I think maybe if that's your type of thing, complex characters and sort of a moral undertone to the stories, if you like that type of thing, then that might be for you. For me, I just didn't, there wasn't that kind of pizzazz that possessed me to continue reading, even though I did end up finishing the whole trilogy. Okay, we're kind of on to the last series that I've read this year, but this series is actually a do not finish for me. So I read both the books that I own, but I will not be reading anymore, and it's Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. So I own both the first one and the second one, which is called The Hollow City. Just again, weren't really for me. I didn't really like any of the characters. I find it really difficult to read books if I A, don't connect with the character, or B, just don't really find any of them likable. Like I don't even have to connect, I just have to like their motivations and want to see them succeed even if I don't relate to them, and I didn't really care for any of them in this. I liked the way that they're written in terms of, so in these books, let me just see if I can find an example. He essentially, if you read like kind of how, do you know how authors have like little mini interviews at the end of some books and they talk about where did you get the inspiration for that book? He talks about how he would go through all these vintage photos like these here, and then he would kind of build a story around those, which I think is just such a brilliant and creative idea. I would never have thought to do anything like that, and I really like how the photos are included in the book throughout the book, so you can kind of just, I don't know, there's something about it that makes me think, oh my goodness, this man has such an imagination, because imagine looking at that photo and coming up with a story like that. I think there's like 6 books or something, and when I looked that up I just thought there's no way that this story spreads out for 6 books. I think it could have been done in a trilogy. I think if it had been just one more book I would have read it, but the fact that it's not makes me think it's gonna get dragged out, and I just don't really care for that. Okay, my next book is Broken Sky by L.A. Weatherly. So this is actually the first book in a trilogy as well, one which I definitely will not be reading any more of, and I will not be finishing this trilogy. It's set in a kind of 1940s-esque America, and it's set in a future where war is not allowed to exist, like fighting doesn't exist, and the way they settle political debates and things like that between countries is every country has a set of like trained fighter pilots who then get selected to go up, and they don't know what they're fighting for, but they fight each other one-on-one in planes in the sky, and whoever wins, like that country win the whatever it is, if it's a trading agreement, if it's like a political thing, stuff like that, which I think is actually a really sick concept, and I was far more invested in that half of the story, and that's kind of where we began with the narrative, and I was like, yes, this is so sick, this is such a cool concept. I would have preferred if we'd have built on that. However, the romance plotline then came heavily in, which I think came out of nowhere for me. They were very full into it straight on, and I don't think there was enough time for the characters to build that relationship, even though they do have history with one another. And I also think this book would have been better off focusing more on the political storylines and exploring those ideas more than the romance, because the romance could have been a subplot. I wouldn't have minded it in there, but it felt like it became the main focus for the narrative, which then took away from all the other great ideas we had going on. Also, another thing that gets introduced is there's this one nation who's run by this almost dictator. The way they run things in that like nation, country, I don't know what it is they believe in star signs. So like you can get arrested for having a specific star sign, or like for having certain things in your birth charts, which I think is really, like, I kind of see it being a cool idea. I feel like it's not really been explored in literature before, but the way it was introduced, like, there was just a lot going on in this book and it didn't feel all cohesive. It felt a bit all over the place. I just wasn't that interested in the Zodiac bit. It kind of felt like the author had plucked the idea off of Instagram or something and just put it in a book. Will not be finishing this trilogy, unfortunately. Oh my goodness, my next book is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. Why did it take me so long to read this book? That's the question I have to ask for you guys, because this has been popular for years. It got massive on the book Instagram pages. It got popular on Book Talk, and every time people would be like, this is a must-read book, I'd be like, no, I'm not gonna read it, I'm not interested in that, it's not for me. Picked this up at a charity shop for £1, which I was like, okay, I can kind of justify that because it's so cheap. Read it in one sitting. The plot twist had my jaw on the floor. I was like, this is incredible literature, and please read it. Gorgeous writing. I really love the writing style in this. We are with a group of teenagers who are all cousins, kind of all related, and every year they go to this private island that their family own, and they spend their summers there, you know, getting up to mischief, like spending time with each other. And the protagonist, who we kind of follow throughout this book, had an accident or something, a trauma that happened to her a couple of summers ago, and she's not been back. She didn't go back the year after the trauma happened, so she's not been to the island in like a couple of years, and she's going back for her first time. And we're kind of trying to discover alongside with her what happened to her, why does she not remember. Very highly recommend. This is such a good read to like read on the beach for a day or something. Oh my goodness, yes. We have 3 more books, guys. We're nearly there. I promise it is a very long video. I'm very aware. I've sat here and filmed it. My third to last book is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. So this is a little bit of a heavier book. If you don't know what it's about, Death is the narrator, and we essentially see him tell the story about this little girl, Liesel, who is living in Germany sort of throughout World War II, and we see kind of the effects of what's happening to the country, but not in the way that I feel like most stories take on World War II. It's more like the side effects of like an everyday civilian and what life is like for them, and we see it kind of through Liesel's life and her growing up in Germany. Because Death is the narrator, I really like that actually, because the way the story is told to me is quite beautiful. It is a very sad story, full of a lot of difficult moments and politics and plot points, but because Death is the narrator, I think the author has approached it with such a care and compassion, and it's a very interesting way to approach World War II and the emotions that maybe surround it as an event in history. I really like Death being the narrator as a concept as well. I think it's very interesting, and I think this book does a good job of it, because I feel like some books it can come across as quite tacky, but because we're focused on Liesel's story rather than Death's story, I like that. And I like that Death isn't this imposing character like telling you all about his life, because it isn't about his life, it's about Liesel's life and Liesel's story. It's quite chunky and like quite difficult to get into. It did take me until about halfway through the book for me to be really enjoying reading it, but I did rate it 5 stars on Storygraph when I'd finished. My second to last book is called I Was Dead for 13 Minutes and Now I Want to Know Why by Sarah Pinborough. Very long title. This is the pinnacle of teen thrillers. This book is not at all what I was expecting from the cover and the synopsis. It is so much better than this lets on. Essentially, one very popular girl at school is found in like just out of a river on a very snowy morning. She was dead for 13 minutes. She comes back to life and we see her going back to school, and it's told through multiple narrators and kind of pops around quite a lot, which I found quite choppy at the beginning, but once I got into it, it made a little bit more sense. So we see the story from her point of view and her kind of trying to get over that trauma. And then we also see it from her ex-best friend from when they were children's point of view. And this best friend, Becca, is a bit of an outsider, you know, she like does drugs, she's into like more gothy emo like things. She's not as popular. They try to kind of rekindle that friendship, which they explore, and then also from the point of view of the police investigator, as the police investigation follows and tries to solve why this girl ended up in the river, essentially, because the story is like she doesn't know how she got there, and the plot twist is incredible. This actually, for a teen book, has very complex characters and very interesting characters, and it is well written for a book which I think is aimed at more teenagers than young adults. And then the last book that I read from January through March, I literally finished this on the last day of March just recently, was The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. It's quite a summery read. I feel like all of her books are very much aimed at like getting you in that summer feeling. Found the characters weren't as relatable because they are in high school. The protagonist is a junior in an American high school, and obviously like I'm 21, I'm not 17, so I can't really relate. But I enjoyed it. It was quite an easy read. Read through it quite quickly. Her dad is a politician, and her mum died when she was younger, so she's living only with her dad, and obviously because he's out all the time working, she kind of doesn't really have a relationship there. She's expected to be quite a high driven person, and she's coming into her summer, and essentially she had an internship lined up which doesn't end up going through, and she has to find other plans from there, but she's very used to her life being planned out, is the plot of the story. And it goes through her summer as she deals with relationships and friendships, and yeah, I really like it. It's quite a nice, warming story, you know, just an easy summer read. I wouldn't say it's too particularly youngly written either. Oh my goodness, and guys, that's all 21 books that I read January through March in 2024 so far. This book video is kind of different. I feel like I used to do a lot of book content and then people didn't really watch it and enjoy it, so I kind of stopped doing it, but at this point I'm like, I don't really care. And if you want to see more content from me, subscribe down below. Lots of camp content, lots of uni content, hopefully more book content if that's something you guys enjoy. And yeah, I'll see you very shortly. Bye!